is Zhou. I'm a vice president with Landmark Partners. Landmark is a secondary specialist in private equity, private real estate, and private infrastructure. There's general consensus in the real estate investment community today that we're late cycle and that value is high, having exceeded prior peaks in almost all major markets. The occupying market is generally healthy, however, certain sectors have experiencing some deteriorating of fundamentals. On the other hand, private real estate continues to provide reliable income for investors' portfolio and offers attractive yield spread to fixed income. Given that dynamics, investors are increasing or maintaining their allocation to private real estate while increasingly focusing on strategies with defensive attributes. Real estate secondary has attracted investors' attention in recent years because it has these important defensive attributes, including acquiring assets at discount to market value, exposure to seasoned assets, accelerated distribution, and diversification. A real estate secondary transaction involves acquiring existing investors' interest in a closed-end fund, a separate managed account, or other types of vehicles. This strategy has expanded in recent years to include recapitalization of funds, portfolios, and assets. The market was born back in 1990s, and the market has seen tremendous amount of growth in the past 5 years. In 2018, Landmark tracked about $5.3 billion of annual transaction volume, and the high water mark was reached back in 2015 at $8.2 billion. The average annual volume in the past 5 years was $5.9 billion. This more than doubles the average volume achieved in the preceding 5 years. This growth is very broad-based and is driven by the increasing use of secondary markets by investors as a portfolio management tool to address their allocation needs, to manage GP relationships, and to create liquidity. Real estate secondary volume is really a function of total outstanding NAV and the percentage of NAV traded every year in the market. As of the end of 2018, we estimated there is about $500 billion of NAV that is held in closed-end vehicles that are 2 years or older, which are the primary targets for secondary transactions. The percentage of NAV traded every year is called turnover ratio. The turnover ratio ranged between 1% and 1.7% in the past 5 years, with the average being 1.2%. Historically, U.S. and foreign pensions, asset managers, endowment foundations are the active seller groups. And U.S.-based sellers used to account for more than half of the volume. And with the secondary being more widely accepted globally, sellers from Europe and Asia now account for about half of the volume last year. And lastly, the underlying assets that traded in the secondary market, about half of that is U.S.-focused funds, which is generally in line with the composition in the primary market. A key recent development in our industry is really the rise of GP-led transactions and LP bulk solutions. This type of GP-led transactions is about 40% of volume traded last year. And this is really driven by the GP's need to address older assets that are held in mature vehicles. Landmark conducted an extensive study back in 2017 on fund terms, and we found that for a typical real estate fund, only about 75% of the value is realized by the time the fund contractual term expired. Aside from volume, a key consideration for investors is pricing, both in terms of a seller or a buyer. The average pricing continues to be very wide ranged in 2018, somewhere between 60 and 90% of NAV. And this average price last year has actually declined slightly from 2017. And we believe that has to do with the flatter expectation for value growth this late in the cycle. Thank you.